Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Education Commission of the State's Partnering for Success on Education Trends and Governor's 2025 State of the State Addresses. This one, it truly is one of our most popular webinars of the year, and we're looking forward to a great discussion today from the ECS team, along with our partners at the National Governors Association. For those of you I haven't gotten to meet personally, I am Joel Moore, the Director of State Relations here at ECS, and it's really nice to be here with you today. In case you don't know, Education Commission of the States draws its knowledge of state policy from a number of sources. Our legislative bill tracking, our monitoring of executive orders and task forces and commissions, and of course, our state relations team's on-the-ground conversations with state leaders and department and agency staff. But in addition to that, for the last 21 years, our amazing policy team has also been reviewing and analyzing each governor's state of the state address, and reporting out on the education policy issues and priorities the governors are speaking out about. By the end of today's session, you'll know what we know about the top education priorities in the states, what these priorities mean for specific states, and of course, we've also built in some time to answer questions about these predicted trends. If this is your first time attending one of ECS's Partnering for Success webinars, this series is designed to provide you with the tools and resources that you can apply in your work, and enhancing everybody's ability to address key challenges in state education policy. We, as an organization, were founded by the states through the Interstate Compact for Education, with the purpose of being that nonpartisan and non-advocacy mechanism for state leaders to learn from one another, which is a role that remains as vital today as it was at our creation 60 years ago this year. On behalf of the entire ECS team, I'd like to thank our partners who make events like this one possible. So thank you for your continued partnership and support that allows us to continue to convene the people behind the policy. With that, I want to introduce ECS President Jose Munoz to help kick off today's conversation and make some introductions. Welcome, Jose.
Thank you so much, Joel, and I'm so thrilled to be part of kicking off this conversation and to be joined by National Governors Association as we focus on the governor's top education priorities for 2025. You know, it's a unique opportunity across our nation as the new president administration has emphasized the powerful role of states in education decision-making. So the state of the state addresses are so helpful for gaining insight into what's at the top of mind of state leaders and the policymakers, and they help us as an organization shape our areas of focus and ensure that we produce meaningful, timely research and resources for our members. In fact, as Joel was mentioning, our team, for the first time ever, activated a committee to identify a set of bipartisan issues on which to guide us into the future. Just to arrive at a final set of policy priorities, which spans across the cradle to career, our team analyzed over 7,000 legislative bills. They reviewed over 400 requests for information on policy issues and tracked the state of the state addresses, which we're discussing today. We'll be showcasing these policy priority areas at our National Forum on Education Policy, July 8th through 9th. Now, registration for that event will open up pretty soon, so stay tuned. It's going to be a particularly exciting event as we celebrate our 60th anniversary. Until then, we so appreciate the opportunity to connect with each of you today about the trends we've identified. It's clear to each of us that the landscape of education policy is rapidly changing. And Education Commission of the States was created for moments like these 60 years ago and continues to be responsive to every state, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories as they build impactful education policy for every student. We continue to work collaboratively with partners, legislators, state leaders, and others just to ensure that we can advance an excellent American education from every state house to schoolhouse. So without further ado, let me welcome Seth Gerson, Program Director for National Governors Association, who will be followed by our very own ECS team members, Lauren Bloomquist and Lauren Pesach. Both Laurens, they're part of our esteemed policy team that evaluates and analyzes all these policies I mentioned related to education systems that are aiming to improve and positively impact the effectiveness of education. So Lauren, Seth, and Lauren, take it away.
All right. Well, thanks, Jose. And hi, everyone. It's great to be with you today. And as always, thanks to Jose and the ECS team, Joel, Lauren, and Lauren. As always, it was great for my colleague Devin Neer, policy analyst on our NGA team, and myself to partner with you to develop this joint resource for the 6th straight year. Just a great collaboration. Just a little bit about the National Governors Association. Our membership are the governors in all 50 states and 5 territories. And since 1908, we've supported governors primarily by providing them with a bipartisan safe space, a safe forum for them to connect with each other, to exchange ideas, share promising practices, strategies they're using, challenges they're facing. It's an opportunity for governors to really share what's working and what's not across party and state lines. And there's a spirit of bipartisanship that infuses all of our work. And that starts with our leadership, which is always a current Republican and a current Democratic governor, with our current chair being Governor Jared Polis of Colorado and our vice chair, Governor Kevin Stitt of Oklahoma. And we have an executive committee evenly represented by current Republican and Democratic governors that oversees all of our work as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't say right from the start that this is a special year for education at NGA. Governor Polis, our chair, has focused his NGA Chairs Initiative on education. His Let's Get Ready Educating All Americans for Success initiative is engaging bipartisan governors through a series of convenings throughout this year. It'll culminate in the release of a roadmap at our NGA summer meeting in July that will guide and support governors in moving education efforts forward in their states and territories. And we'll put a link in the follow-up resources that we send after the webinar. I thought the best place to start this conversation would just be with a little background on State of the State addresses themselves. So why a State of the State address? Well, first, many state constitutions mandate that a governor give an annual or regular report to their state legislature, and it usually comes in the form of an address that reflects on the condition of the state and then outlines the governor's plans and priorities for the upcoming legislative session. It's an update, it's a marker, it's a blueprint, it's a look back and a look forward, a reflection and a recap, a celebration of past successes, and a springboard for new initiatives. In addition to the constitutional mandate, the State of the State address provides an annual opportunity for governors to use that critical combination of policy levers and powers that are so unique to the gubernatorial role. First, the bully pulpit, the agenda setting role. They're using that address to build and raise awareness, shape their state dialogue and discourse, and detail an overarching vision, agenda, and set of goals for the session. Second, their convening power. In this case, the legislators they'll need to make progress on their priorities are right in the audience in front of them. Not to mention the address has that larger audience they're speaking to across media, the local leaders, the parents, the families, the business leaders, the educators that they'll need to build and anchor their efforts across the state. And finally, budgetary authority, providing a preview or an overview of how they propose to invest state dollars over the next year to fund their priorities. Now, there's a few contextual factors that I want to highlight before Lauren and Lauren dive a little bit deeper into specific education policy focus areas overall and within the State of the State addresses. First, it's noteworthy that the most recent election cycle this past November included 13 gubernatorial elections. There were 5 incumbent governors up for re-election in American Samoa, Montana, Puerto Rico, Utah, and Vermont. And of these 5, we have new governors from the 2 territories, Governor Pula in American Samoa and Governor Gonzalez Colon in Puerto Rico. In addition to Puerto Rico and American Samoa, there are 9 new governors in Delaware, Indiana, Missouri, New Hampshire, North Carolina, North Dakota, Washington, and West Virginia, as well as in South Dakota with Governor Roden replacing Governor Noem with her appointment recently as U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security. As such, across 50 states, the current balance is just about an even split of 27 Republican governors and 23 Democratic governors. And this bears on addresses because where a governor stands in the life cycle of their term generally impacts their focus for their State of the State. For new governors giving their first State of the State addresses, they're looking to translate the poetry of the campaign into the prose of governing. For governors beginning their second term, it's marking what they've been able to achieve in that first term, the progress made while re-energizing their agenda, building momentum for accomplishing their second term goals. For governors giving their last State of the State, it's celebrating accomplishments while seeking to extend their legacy during this last session. Second, it's critical to view a governor's address through the prism of each state's unique education governance structure, the constellation of state legislatures, state boards of education, state education chiefs, all critical partners in whether a governor is able to move their agenda forward. To that point, it's important to keep in mind that right now, 39 of 50 states have so-called political trifectas, where the governor and both houses of the legislature are from the same party. Only 3 states, Michigan, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania, have a split legislature. So if there's that inter-party alignment, that unity can really provide a smoother road of passage for a governor's priorities and their ability to make change. By contrast, in states where there's a split between the governor and the legislature, the speech can be used as a first volley of priorities and a way to use the bully pulpit power to persuade and make the case on what likely will be a session-long negotiation. And then there's state education chiefs, many appointed by the governor, some separately elected, and some appointed by a state board that may or may not be aligned with the governor. There are new or changing education chiefs in at least 12 states over the past year, which will almost certainly have a strong ripple effect on state education policies as well. I think it's also worth noting that we continue to see all governors speaking about education as a priority in some way in their state addresses. Governors, all we say now, all are education governors. There was a time when it was more rare to do so, but now all governors are speaking on education. Some of them may come a little bit more from the post-secondary and workforce side, some from the K-12 side, some from early childhood, many from all three, but they're all speaking to education in some form. And lastly, I do want to acknowledge upfront that we know there's a lot of change at the federal level right now. And please know from an NGA side, I know ECS is as well, we're closely following the various actions by the administration. And my colleagues in NGA's Office of Government Relations remain in close communication with the department about any impacts to states and territories. At NGA's winter meeting just last month with 48 governors, governors agreed to adopt a series of federal priorities, and that included specific language to support continued investment in federal education programs that address workforce needs. So we'll continue to work closely with governors and their staff to ensure federal resources flow as intended to states and territories. But I wanted to say that up front, giving a lot of the change that's happened over the last few months. Now moving to governors' overall policy focus areas, outside of just their state of the state, but overall what we're seeing as the pulse of what they're focused on. And I point to 6 areas in K-12 right now. And again, not surprisingly, here a lot of alignment with areas governors covered in their state of the state addresses that Lauren and Lauren will dive deeper into in just a few minutes. First, math and literacy supports. We're continuing to see governors from both parties looking at their NAEP, at their state assessments, their formative assessments to target support to students in schools. There's been bipartisan gubernatorial interest, investment in the science of reading, evidence-based literacy instruction, from Governor Ivey's Alabama Literacy Act to Governor Kelly's Blueprint for Literacy in Kansas, and significant investments from about a $78 million increase over the last number of years from Governor Little in Idaho, $55 million put to literacy from Governor Walz in Minnesota. And governors are also continuing to invest in those math supports, from Governor Reynolds in Iowa to Governor McMaster in South Carolina. Governors using an array of strategies to do so, from deploying literacy and math coaches and professional learning for educators in California, in Maryland, New York, and Ohio, or promoting high-impact, high-intensive tutoring in Arkansas, Louisiana, Massachusetts, or leveraging summer and after-school programs for literacy and math in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, again, all working to boost supports for these core academic areas. Second, another continued bipartisan challenge has been chronic absenteeism. Examples of strategies in this area include Governor Youngkin's more than $400 million package, the All-In Virginia initiative that's provided a significant investment to help districts increase attendance. Governor Lamont's LEAP program has used home visiting to boost rates in Connecticut, and Governor McKee has used the bully pulpit and data dashboards to spur increased attendance in Rhode Island. And now building upon that work with a nearly $3 million Math Matters initiative to improve students' math skills. Third, I know a lot of conversation on this, and we're hearing it as well, AI in education. There's now at least 27 state education agencies that have created AI guidance, and many governors have created multi-agency task forces in this area. Most states are focused on creating the infrastructure, the governance for decision-making as the AI tools and technologies advance, knowing that AI tools and technologies will change, but having a clear vision for how do the decisions get made on using and safeguarding new AI is critical. State guidance has explored areas from the ethical and responsible use of AI to AI literacy, key strategies for integrating AI tools into instruction, and lesson planning and professional development for educators in this area. Fourth, lots of bipartisan investment and energy this year on K-12 education finance. For example, a new governor, a former middle school teacher in both DC and Delaware, Governor Meyer of Delaware, is looking to update Delaware's state education funding law that hasn't been updated since 1940. So a long time coming for some updates to that funding formula. Another new governor, Governor Kehoe, Missouri, has announced a new task force on state finance. That hasn't been updated since 2005. Governor Pillen has created a Blue Ribbon Commission to study Nebraska's 30-year-old formula. And Governor Shapiro worked last year to update their funding formula. Governor Scott Kotek also looking at theirs. So just a lot of movement this year in that area. Fifth, governor's looking not only to student support from the academic side, but also by addressing students' mental health and well-being. Again, Lauren will dive a little bit into more specifics here, but certainly the movement on school cell phone restrictions, concerns about the impact of social media, technology on student mental health from Governor Sanders' recently passed Bell to Bell No Cell initiative in Arkansas to Governor Hochul's Unplug and Play proposal in New York. Other examples I'll just mention in this area, Governor DeWine really used his State of the State this year overall to talk about the student wellness funds that he's put together. He's been a long running at this, even pre-pandemic, with their Student Wellness and Success Fund, and it's spurred more than $885 million to be spent on student well-being across the state. And then Governor Evers from Wisconsin has called 2025 the year of the kid, and he's proposed $300 million for school-based mental health supports. The last area, educator workforce. We're continuing to see bipartisan efforts to address amplified educator and staff shortages in many states and districts across the country. Governors continuing to boost educators' salaries, a lot of talk around teacher pay, and strengthen their teacher and principal pipelines to better recruit, attract, retain school staff, including through Grow Your Own, teacher residency, apprenticeship programs, expanded mentoring, professional development, and career pathways and leadership opportunities. For example, Governor Green of Hawaii has worked to increase teacher pay and housing support, particularly identifying that could help in their retention and recruitment of teachers. They've seen a drop in teacher vacancies from 1,000 to 100 last year, so definitely seeing an impact. Governor Little from Idaho has continued to invest in career ladders, and Governor Pritzker looking at the whole scope from recruitment to retention with specific strategies and guidance for districts across Illinois on their teacher recruitment and pipeline grants. So a lot of work happening across the country. That's what we're seeing right now. And that's just a snapshot, but I'm going to pass it to Lauren. And Lauren, I'm happy to take your questions alongside them after the presentation. Thanks. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren Blomquist, a Senior Policy Analyst at ECS, and I'm excited to share some of the governor's trending topics with you today.
Hi, I'm Lauren Pisach. I'm a Policy Analyst here at ECS, and really excited to get into some of these topics. So we're really excited to see so many of you joining us. ECS and NGA have been collaborating on this project for many years now. And so we're back again to talk about what's on the mind of governors this year in education policy. So our research team analyzed 48 governors' addresses in 47 states and the US Virgin Islands. Some of this analysis also included budget addresses or inaugural addresses in states where a State of the State speech wasn't given this year. And so from those addresses with our team, we identified 7 key trends, in the governor's speeches. And they are in order of frequency, although there are some ties in here. workforce development and career and technical education, K-12 funding, teacher staffing, academic achievement, in which we're including reading and STEM initiatives, early care and education, where we're including childcare and preschool initiatives, physical and mental health, and school choice. Our State of the States tracker, which you can find on our website, is a great tool to dig deeper into the education policy proposals that we discussed here in this presentation. And with our tracker, you can look at a state to see what the governor's priorities are for education policy this year. And you can also compare it to years past, which is great. And you can also see the analysis by topic, so you can look at which states discussed these 7 trending topics. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lauren to talk about our first trend.
Thanks, Lauren, and thank you everyone for joining us again today. Our first trending topic is workforce development and career and technical education, which continues to trend at the top of the list year after year. 33 governors highlighted the importance of creating pathways for students to engage in meaningful career opportunities and participate in hands-on learning experiences. They also noted the value of having student pathways that lead to well-paying careers that do not require a bachelor's degree. Many governors mentioned apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, and internships as vehicles for young people to gain valuable work experience and real-world skills while earning money and preparing to meet state workforce demands. Governors noted that business and industry partnerships are part of making these programs successful. Some governors also highlighted funding increases specifically targeted to CTE. Wyoming Governor Mark Gordon highlighted the Wyoming Innovation Partnership's success in aligning post-secondary education with industry needs, reporting a 690% 5-year return on investment. The partnership's contributions to the state's gross product exceeds 7 times its budget. The Innovation Partnership plans to transition from one supported by state funding to one supported by businesses and communities. Rhode Island Governor Daniel McKee proposed a career and technical education program at the Community College of Rhode Island called Ready to Build that will create pre-apprenticeship jobs in the building trades. He also proposed investing 1,000 new work-based learning opportunities and proposed an enhancement to Real Jobs Rhode Island to train an additional 500 Rhode Islanders. Along with workforce development and CTE, K-12 funding is in one of the top spots again this year. Just like last year, 32 governors discussed K-12 funding. Governors celebrated record funding increases to public education. Several governors called for or proposed funding formula changes that will lead to resource allocation to the schools with the most need. Governors also called for additional funding to serve students from special populations. For example, students receiving special education services, students from low-income families, and those who are English language learners. Many governors called for both specific funding additions and for fully funding education budgets. Colorado Governor Jared Polis committed to implementing the new finance formula to ensure that schools serving English language learners and students from low-income backgrounds receive the resources they need. He also proposed a budget to fully fund K-12 schools. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe recommended a $2 million increase to the foundation formula. And as Seth mentioned, he also announced a school funding modernization task force to rewrite the school funding formula. Next up, Lauren will talk about our third trending topic.
All right, so next up, we'll talk about teachers. Governors have made teachers a trending topic every year that we've tracked State of the State addresses, except for 2021. The focus has shifted over the years through various topics like preparation and certification and licensure. But this year, like that last year, the governors were focused on issues of teacher compensation and recruiting and retaining teachers. Some governors highlighted the impact that teachers have on student achievement and stressed the importance of addressing teacher shortages. Some governors praised teacher pay raises from last year, while others called for new pay raises in the coming year. and highlighted that salaries can be an important tool for recruitment and retention. Governors addressed the importance of recruiting and retaining teachers through providing new pathways to the profession and removing barriers to entering the profession by paying student teachers and making other debt-free pathways to the classroom. They talked about barriers in their states that are keeping teachers out of the classroom and how they can address them in policy. In South Carolina, Governor Henry McMaster called for raising the minimum starting teacher salary to $50,000 this year rather than waiting until next year. And he mentioned that the minimum salary is now $47,000 a year, which is a 56% increase over 8 years. And in Maryland, Governor Wes Moore pointed to the teacher shortage as the single largest barrier to achievement in schools and announced recruiting and retaining teachers as a first-order priority. He called for legislative authority to launch a national campaign to recruit top educators to Maryland and proposed building debt-free paths to teaching. Next up, let's talk about early care and education. Providing educational opportunities to young learners in states remained a top issue mentioned by governors, and this is the 3rd year in a row that it's been in our trending topics. At least 24 governors talked about early childhood education and childcare in their addresses. Governors stressed the importance of early education and care in strengthening families, in preparing students to learn, and in strengthening communities. They stressed the burden that finding affordable childcare can be for many families, and also addressed the challenges faced in the early childhood education workforce by proposing various opportunities to support the workforce through pay or other initiatives. Additionally, governors celebrated achievements to either enrolling more students in pre-K or providing universal pre-K in their states. In Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey highlighted a $1.5 billion state investment in childcare and noted that 36,000 more children are now receiving childcare. And in Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds celebrated the number of 4-year-olds participating in preschool. She also proposed the Early Childhood Continuum of Care program that will provide 3-year grants for preschool programs and childcare providers that come together to integrate their services. She touted the work of the Community Solutions Funds for helping to raise wages for childcare workers and announced a statewide solutions fund to enhance childcare worker wages across the state. At least 25 states addressed academic achievement. In this category, we've grouped together governors' efforts to address numeracy, literacy, and academic achievement more broadly. Governors stressed the importance of early literacy and the importance of using high quality and updated literacy instructional tools and methods to improve reading outcomes, such as through the science of reading. Many highlighted efforts to implement the science of reading and to improve reading test scores. While some addresses celebrated advances in certain subjects, others noted that there still has work to be done to helping students grow. They also talked about supports to help improve student outcomes, like expanding out-of-school time programs, tutoring programs, and counseling efforts. In Alaska, Governor Mike Dunleavy celebrated the implementation of the READS Act in Alaska. He highlighted early data that shows the percentage of Alaskan students who met early literacy benchmarks grew from 41% to 57%, and noted that Alaskan students outpaced national reading growth in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. In New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham praised the summer literacy programs that enrolled 10,000 students and resulted in an 11% increase in reading proficiency. She celebrated the launch of a structured literacy program that teaches the science of reading and resulted in higher scores. And she also called for a STEM program to match the achievements that were made through the literacy programs. And now I'll pass it back to Lauren to take us through our last 2 major trends.
Thanks. Mental and physical health was mentioned by 21 governors. Student mental health is still on the mind of many state leaders. Governors highlighted expansions to youth mental and behavioral health programming and stressed the importance of the availability of these programs for students. Some governors emphasized the need to add more school support staff to address student mental health with counselors, social workers, and psychologists. Others celebrated steps toward providing access to support students through school-based clinics. Substance abuse prevention was also a consideration for some governors. Most governors addressed physical health in students through free school meals. Governors celebrated the successes of the current free school lunch programs, and a number of governors proposed adding free breakfast. New York Governor Kathy Hochul proposed providing all students free breakfast and lunch, highlighting the financial benefit and the gift of time that this would provide families. She also highlighted continuing efforts to make youth mental health a top priority through investments in mental health first aid and in clinics and schools. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders announced that money from medical marijuana will be used to sustainably fund both free breakfast and lunch programs. She also highlighted her support of healthy diets and support for state farms and businesses through the Buy Local Act, which encourages schools to purchase their food in-state. School choice is new in the top trending categories this year. At least 21 governors mentioned school choice as a mechanism to provide educational opportunities for all students. Some governors seek to expand access to school choice through various programs, highlighting the benefits that choice provides students from particular backgrounds, and stressing the importance of parental choice through education. In addition, other governors stress the need to ensure accountability and income limits to school choice programs, and emphasize the importance of maintaining public school funding while considering these programs. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin proposed $50 million for the Virginia Opportunity Scholarship Grant Program that serves families from low incomes. The funding will provide $5,000 in scholarships to 10,000 families with low incomes without reducing existing education funding. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs called for the increase in accountability for the Education Savings Account program, including responsible income caps. With that, we conclude our list of the top 7 state education trends in the governor's State of the State addresses. Now Lauren will talk about our final notable topic for today.
Thanks. So while not a trend necessarily by numbers, we wanted to note the topic of cell phone bans. Last year, we only saw 3 governors mention this issue, and this year that grew to 17 governors mentioning the issue. So far, governors addressed the role that cell phones play distracting students from academic pursuits in the classroom, how disruptive they can be for teachers while they're trying to do instruction, and also the impact that cell phones can have on students' mental health. And so with that, those are our trends. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation. And now I'm going to hand it back to Joel to facilitate a Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you all so much, Seth, Lauren, and Lauren. While folks are submitting their questions in the chat box, I wanted to start by asking you if anything surprised you about this year's trends or the trends versus previous years. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, Joel, I can go first if helpful. So I would just say, in terms of the school cell phone ban restrictions, where we just ended up to think about that it was a smaller number, just last year, with John and Haidt's book coming out, Anxious Generation, I think that really supercharged a lot of conversation, across the country, and to see that move so fast and have those conversations. And I'll just add that one of the interesting things that came up at our winter meeting last month was where that policy can make the change for districts and schools. Is it at the parent level? Is it the district level, the school level, or governors being able to provide the cover for districts and schools to be able to have some of those cell phone restrictions? Governors sort of traveling the state and hearing from administrators, teachers, parents, that it was really helpful to be able to have that cover, that they could not keep it as local, but have the state cover for being able to do so. So really interesting around entry points for where those policies take place.
Yeah, I also thought the growth in cell phone trends was really interesting, just coming out of nowhere with how many mentioned cell phones this year compared to last year. And I also thought that our teacher trends being so focused on this year, just the increase in salary and not necessarily mentioning pathways to the classroom as much, which has been a really big trend legislatively. I track teacher legislation for us here at ECS, and so that's been a huge trend, and to not see it pop up necessarily on the in the addresses was interesting.
I think, oh, go ahead, Joel.
No,
Sorry.
go ahead, Lauren.
I think one of the interesting things to note is that a lot of the trends do stay the same with kind of changes around the edges. I think Lauren and Seth both echoed kind of that cell phone piece and what that means for student mental health. And there were the free school lunches when it comes to addressing health is, I think, one of the things that was notable to add. The different states that have talked about it, who's had it, and who's contemplating adding that when it comes to student health outside of the mental health piece.
Right. Thinking about other things that we may have seen that you didn't call out of the governor's State of the State addresses. Paul Mills writes a question that he's surprised to not see declining enrollment among the trending topics. Did y'all see any governors taking on this topic, or maybe who were starting to address this in different or more indirect ways?
I do think it's part of the conversation and what's driving some of the, like we mentioned earlier, around some of the funding formula changes. A conversation post-pandemic of where do things sit, what can be changed in the funding formula, but then also looking at what those enrollments look like. Certainly part of it. And I think one of the lessons from some of the states that have done this in most recent years, states like Tennessee and South Carolina, was doing a lot of that community engagement and engagement of a lot of the district leaders on the ground to do some listening sessions to really understand, not only with working with the legislature, but if this is the funding formula changes that you want to make, what's changed on the ground, really looking at the enrollment trends across the state, understanding what's happening in those communities as you go into it, has that buy-in to be able to do so. I know work that we've relied on and put into the governor's advisors' hands has been a lot of bellwether work. They've done a lot of state education, finance focus. I think they have a new newsletter. So for folks that are interested in diving a little deeper on, where states are moving on this, what districts can do, always found their materials very helpful.
Great. Thinking about, I know the early care was one of the trends that came up. Was there anything about increasing childcare wages through additional funds, or how states are starting to handle support for early care and education?
Yeah, I would say many governors acknowledge the fact that low wages are an issue that is impacting the early care and education workforce. Some addressed it with initiatives and effort to address those wages, others just called attention to it.
And I'll just add from resource side that our children and families team at NGA has done a lot of deep work on some of the childcare. Over the last year, they had a childcare roundtable with a number of governors' offices, have put out some resources on that. We'll include that in the follow-up materials, but know that on our website, there's a lot of good resources around how states are thinking about childcare.
Thank you. There are so many good questions in here. You mentioned student mental health. How were y'all seeing governors talk about social emotional learning or durable skills, or are they tying that into workforce development needs? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, Joel. And I think this is where, sometimes the text changes of the words that are being used, but throughout the Let's Get Ready conversations with bipartisan governors, a lot has come up around not only looking at those core academic skills of math and reading and science that are so critical, but also the holistic skills that students need, right? And so when governors are talking about this, they're talking about communication and collaboration, problem solving, adaptability, critical thinking, and they may call them different things, you know, whether personal success skills or soft skills, you know, but all getting towards how do we want to make sure that students are prepared and are bringing themselves to not only on the academic side, but also to be prepared for post-secondary in the workforce with those holistic skills that are so important as well.
And I know that earlier in recent memory, NAEP scores came out. Did any states address NAEP or student achievement that you found notable? Look.
I think a lot of governors did mention NAEP. I think that many of them, in the case where there was cause to celebrate, they did. And then I think the ones where maybe they didn't see the results that they wanted or expected, they really took the challenge. So what can they do better? Really, again, with academic achievement, focusing on the science of reading, as well as really thinking about that numeracy piece and math literacy and how can they kind of move towards that other piece, both reading and math.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. Really using it as a driver for those conversations around what needs to change. And also, you know, I think what we're seeing in this unpacking, we had a few of these states share on our last monthly call with advisors. You know, Louisiana, Alabama, these states that there were some bright spots. Really trying to unpack what went well there, what were the strategies used, and how can they be replicated in other states. But using that charge, I remember last time there was NAEP, and I expect more of this. You know, Governor Polis, I remember looking at their math scores, particularly their 8th grade math scores, and saying, okay, well, we have to do a lot of intensive tutoring, especially in middle and high school, for math, and put together a whole statewide math investment, coaches and otherwise, to really provide an infrastructure for building up the scores. And then they saw, you know, an increased progress just this past time. So again, it can be used in that catalyst way.
A couple of folks pointed out that a lot of these trends hit the early ed and K-12 spaces. What were you seeing as far as higher ed or post-secondary trends?
Yeah, Joel, I think you're right. Most of these are in K-12, and that's just simply based on the numbers. When governors did talk about post-secondary, it usually was in the area of affordability, tuition, and the cost for students. Sometimes there was some, again, workforce development and CTE with community colleges that kind of touches on that post-secondary space. But again, we categorize that as workforce development and CTE rather than post-secondary. But again, in that that post-secondary space, I would say it was mostly in the realm of affordability and tuition.
Lauren, or sorry, go ahead, Seth.
Oh, I was just going to say a similar resource that our post-secondary team's been doing a lot of work around the skills area that intersects with post-secondary, and especially around non-degree credentials. And so, again, we'll share those resources, but a lot of deep work with a number of bipartisan states to figure out how to move their systems forward. And I know what is a hot topic across states. So I want to make sure that learning is shared, and we'll make sure you have those resources.
Absolutely. And I'll go ahead and get an early plug in for our next Partnering for Success in April, which will be on non-degree credentials. So look forward to the link for that one. Lauren P., you mentioned, talked a little bit about teachers and supports for teachers. Was there anything on teacher mental health?
So we tracked 48 states. So there's a lot of governor's addresses to remember off the top of your head. What I do remember, maybe not specifically to teacher mental health, but more to teacher working conditions, and making sure that teachers feel supported in the classroom so that they can do their jobs effectively and help with retaining teachers and making sure they stay in the classroom. And there were also focuses on trusting teachers to know what they require in their classes, and giving them that support to enable them as professionals, and just knowing that enabling our teachers to do their job well will result in better results. And I just want to, not related to teachers, but I just wanted to plug again our resource on the website where you can look through all of the governor's addresses. We're seeing so many questions and I don't think we'll have time to answer them all about what specific governor said, and you can find that on our website. So feel free to check that out, and then we're always happy to answer follow-up questions as well.
Great. Let's see. Tracy asked about arts and education. Did y'all see anything on arts education? I do remember from tracking policy platforms last fall that Governor Kehoe in Missouri was one of the only candidates to bring up arts education, but I didn't know if it came up in his state of the state.
Nothing specifically, but Joel, just reinforced the same around these holistic skills that when governors are talking about, and creativity itself has been one that's come up a good amount. And when we're talking about that, the interdisciplinary nature of when you're teaching math and reading and science, and making sure that you're also teaching these skills throughout, and arts is a good way of doing that. And so when we're talking about some of these holistic skills, certainly, across the conversation in terms of what students need as skills to get into post-secondary workforce.
Great. Thank you, Seth. Scanning through to see what else we may be able to hit quickly for one last question. STEM education. I think that maybe falls into your holistic skills comments, Seth. Lauren, did y'all see much on STEM?
Yeah, in our student achievement section, we tracked STEM efforts, especially as they relate to increasing numeracy and math. We've seen for the past couple of years a real focus on improving literacy. And like we mentioned in New Mexico, governors are starting to mention wanting to emulate their successes in literacy by trying to implement similar strategies around numeracy and early math skills.
Similar to that, lots of questions on work-based learning and CBE. Lauren, did you have anything on that?
I think that we heard a lot of governors mention work-based learning as a way for students to get those applied skills that they need to move into the workforce. So trying to make sure that, again, that there's some continuity between what students are expected in the K-12 system and how they can apply that moving into post-secondary workforce and beyond.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you for those great questions, and everybody for y'all's participation today. I'm sorry that we didn't get to all of your questions. I'll have our state relations team take a look. We have your questions, and we'll pass along some resources as we have them on some questions that you've got. Really appreciate each of you joining us today. Huge round of applause for our presenters, Seth Gerson, Lauren Pasach, and Lauren Bloomquist. The written brief on governor's education priorities and state of the state addresses is going to come out on March 31st. That'll be emailed to each of you in follow up to this webinar, along with the video and a link to the ECS YouTube page, which features this and all of our other Partnering for Successes. I also want you to please remember that we're here to support you in all of your work. All of our resources, including policy guides and 50-state comparisons, are available to everyone and your teams at no cost on our website at ecs.org. If there's ever any way we can assist, please feel free to reach out directly to me or your state liaison. Their names can be found on our website as well. Finally, there are so many projects that we have in the works. I want to make sure that you're aware of one of our newest resources, our K-12 funding toolkit. This is an amazing new policy guide from Chris Duncombe, our policy principal for school finance, and from Lauren Pasach, who's on the call today, and offers guidance for any state policymaker who's looking to reform or redesign their state's K-12 funding formulas. It was developed in conjunction with a working group of national experts on school funding and state leaders who were engaged in the work on the ground. And I really can't say enough good things about it. It's going to be a great resource for years to come. Finally, don't forget to save the date for our National Forum on Education Policy, July 9th through 11th at the Grand America Hotel in Salt Lake City. Registration will open here in a couple of weeks. It's got so many amazing sessions that really touch on all of the trends that were brought up today and so many of the questions that you all brought up in the chat. So please, would love to see you in Salt Lake City this summer. If you're interested in learning more about these convenings, please contact Caitlin Dennis, who added her contact information to the chat below. Hope that you're able to take at least one idea away from today's webinar that your state can draw from. And again, if you have any questions or requests related to today's session, please feel free to reach out to me or today's presenters. Our emails are going in the chat right now. Again, it'll be today's recorded session will be shared in your post-event email and made available for viewing on ECS's YouTube page as well. With that, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Seth, Lauren, National Governors Association. We are adjourned for this Partnering for Success. Have a great afternoon.